You're listening to another Woodshop podcast, the okayest podcast of its type. Your hosts are Daniel Dunlap of Daniel Dunlap Woodworks, Peter Kapar of Petrie's Workshop, and Braden Boakes of Littlebug Woodworking. You can find them as well as the podcast on your favorite social media channels.
Welcome to episode 226 of another Woodshop podcast, where this week we are joined by arguably one of the original queens of DIY, turning out amazing DIY content on her blog, YouTube channel, and all of the other social media for over a decade. She's on her third ugly house, fourth if you count the one with wheels. Please help me welcome the not so ugly duckling and the Pinterest princess herself, Sarah Fogle from Ugly Duckling House. Woo!
Woo!
What's
Hi, everyone.
up?
That was a fantastic intro. My goodness. I should summarize
That's what
that.
he does.
Use that
That's
as
what he
my
does.
That's my thing.
He just wings it too.
I am
was
fairly
amazing.
okay at one thing, and it's the intros.
That's it. That's
You
it.
know what
That's
else
he's a
I'm good
one-trick
at?
like
pony.
every bio that I pitch to a sponsor, potential sponsor.
Just
That's
use
fantastic.
that
You should
clip.
Just rep that for me.
We could send you the clip.
The music's DRM free, so like you can send it anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think the music would help, especially when I'm talking to a
And you-
potential brand who has no idea who I am. Hi, let me use your product and then pay me.
Yeah.
While it's playing, you've got to do the Emperor's New Groove, like kick the door open.
Yeah.
My
I'm back-
son's newest obsession is Emperor's New Groove, and I'm so
it's great.
excited about that.
It's making a
'cause one of the
comeback.
best
I saw
movies
some
ever.
good costumes for Halloween.
He's got great taste. Speaking of great taste,
No, just shut up. Speaking of great taste,
Oh.
Dan, stay in your lane, Braden.
Braden was switching lanes. I was all confused. Guys and lady, we have one.
Wait, Dan. No. Shut up. You didn't say the word. Our patron.
Oh,
Dan.
Can we start over?
Speaking of
Is it
great
too late to
taste,
start over?
Dan.
Our patrons?
There you go. All right.
Gentlemen and lady, we have one new patron, and that new patron is Vern Makes. Thank you, and
know
welcome to the Met Army, Vern. Also, want to give a shout out to Gregory D'Ambrosia.
Yeah.
Sorry if I butchered your name, Gregory. He upgraded while we were doing the pre-show, so thank you, Gregory. Now, let's get to all of our VIP patrons. Are you guys buckled up? I hope so. Big shout out to Damon from BWG Woodworking, Jeremy Claybaugh. Jeremy bought a hat for me on my Etsy store. Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Stand-up guy.
Mike from Woodwork and Weld, Jake Miller from A Sweet Shop, Mayo Spider-Man. That's Alex Adams. John. Don't worry, I'm a
Okay.
professional. I got this. Yeah, I got it. John Herbolsheimer from Living Lath Woodworks, Jarrod Lapuma from LL Builds, Tyler Booth at Temecula Yard Games, Henry Lutens from Manfreda Wood, Charlie Coons from Stubby K Studio, Justin Frazier from Fraser Canyon Woodworks, Sarah Goldstien at Rosie's Woodshop. Wait, she changed it on me. Hold on, let me start over there. Sarah Rose Goldstein with Rosie's Row Woodshop. There.
are you okay?
We get trolled by our
I'm okay.
listeners.
I'm good. Michael at Gillette Woodworks, El Jefe over at Maker's Way. That is Jeff. Victor at Whim Designs. Raw Doggin' Mismatched Nips. Oh, God. That is Nick Brim Woodworking. Send all your complaints to Nick Brim Woodworking at yahoo.com. Max and Liz Reed at Redesign Co. Bill Burkle at WTB Woodworking. Jake Conine at Dobby's Craft House. The handsomest duckling. That is Patrick Gensel. Also send complaints to Patrick Gensel at AOL.com. Ed Mancini at Mancini Woodworking. Chris at Chris Will Make. This list is long.
From Rosie's Woodshop.
Oh my God, wait. I'm sorry. I'm playing some audio and I'm like, I apologize.
We are falling apart.
Yeah, we are. This is our first time. We're nervous. We don't often have a girl here.
You
Chris
had
at Chris Will Make.
225 like rough starts, like rough drafts. Is that how it
Yes.
went?
We'll figure it out.
It hasn't
gotta
gotten any better,
We'll
Sarah.
get eventually.
I can't wait for the in 5-10 minutes when Pete plays the first piece of audio and hasn't turned the volume up yet.
It's all the way up. It's up.
All right, this is going to be the third time I read Chris at Chris Will Makes Name. Where's my apple pie, Sarah? That continues to be Scott from Red Leg Custom Woodworks. Max and Minnie Coons over at StubbyK Studio. And wrapping it all up, it is Justin Bailey over at Campfire Studios. Campfire Woodworks.
Woodworks.
Studios.
Studio's good. Yeah.
He's got a
They were shooting a commercial this week, so that's
basically a studio.
Studio.
Yeah. That, ladies and gentlemen, is your starting lineup for the VIP patrons. If you want to help us out in the Patreon world, you can go over to patreon.com/Another Woodshop Podcast and get signed up over there. Look, we even have a free tier. I don't know what you get for it, but you can sign up and be like,
a good feeling inside.
Yeah.
The warm and fuzzies.
Gives you all those feelings.
Well, I also want to shout out our sponsor this week, which is all the paid patrons. Thank you, guys.
Hey, all the paid patrons.
You literally keep the lights on, and we have a lot of them.
And by lights, I mean this one, that one,
like
this
the
one
two back there, and then the one behind Braden. Yeah.
These are the only lights that light up my house, though. I can't afford regular
It's all
lights.
just mood lighting.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, we have a guest this week. Sarah is here. Sarah Fogle from the Ugly Duckling DIY / Ugly Duckling House, depending on where you're finding her.
Yes.
So give us the elevator pitch. Everyone wants to know, who the hell do you think you are?
I always suck at this particular part because it's hard to summarize when you creatively bounce from project to project. But I like to say that I am a perpetual project starter. I am, dues paying member of the Never Quite Finished Club.
Hey, I'm in there.
I can relate.
I also say that working on one room at a time is for suckers because I love bouncing around from DIY project to DIY project, depending on the interests that I have for the day. But anyway, I love DIY home renovation. Demo is my absolute favorite thing to do in the entire world. If you can give me a sledgehammer and a dust mask and some boots, I would love to destroy and then rebuild something. But I just love home renovation and I love teaching other people about it. I have been doing it for a very, very long time, and I bounce from project to project as I see fit and try and teach along the way from what I learn. So a lot of what I do is usually for the first time to some degree, because I don't like to repeat the same project. I'm not a person who can build a cutting board multiple times and then film it and then teach you from my vast knowledge of cutting board experience. I will build one cutting board and then go, this is what I learned when I did it, and then never build one again. So, I've done that. I build a deck and then I've replaced a deck and then I never have done one after that. I may do a third, who knows?
One and done.
Yes, but I work on my home, mostly doing renovation projects. I do a camper. It's a 1946 Spartan Manor that I am super excited about, but rarely have the money for. And people keep asking me when it's going to be finished. And it's sadly an answer I cannot give because it is a money pit. And I just bought a house that was built in 1925. So now I have two money pits, and now I'm also flipping furniture.
And you affectionately call the camper Ruby.
Yes, I call it Ruby's Revival. Thank you for the reminder.
Not even just Ruby, Ruby's Revival.
Yes,
the full name.
I call it Ruby. I use the hashtag Ruby's Revival so people can follow along with it, just because I learned a long time ago that hashtags are very useful when people want to follow a specific project you're working on, as opposed to just your account. So I created it because I also don't have the energy to create entirely new channels based on just one project that I want to work on. It's a sub compartment of my overall channel. If you just want to follow that project, you're kind of SOL, because I'm not going to build you a whole other channel just for that content. So,
well, it's a good thing that you're launching that Patreon by the end of the year, where you're going to get early behind the scenes and early access to all your content, and all the proceeds from that will go towards Ruby's Revival.
Yes,
I think that's great.
Let's commit me to
great that you're announcing this right now.
I say by the end of the show,
separately building content that I then have to I then have to build around. I actually started my Instagram subscription going, I have no idea what I'm going to give you guys. I have no clue. I mean, maybe I'll share you sneak peeks. That's about all I can offer. But I already share sneak peeks because I can't wait on stuff. So I have no idea. You can pay me.
That's why I don't have a subscription, because I'm like, I tell you everything as I do it. I'm not going to do a special pre-launch of
I wish
my
I could
stories.
be that put together to put stuff together for just people who wanted to pay me for it. But I never think that highly of myself, where I think that like I've got something exclusive that only some eyeballs can see.
Access to your blogs, to your YouTube videos. That's all you got to put on there, and you're good.
Yeah, I mean, I've always just offered people free content, but of course, I also started in the ancient times, back before, I don't know,
The before four times.
The
before times when people were less wise about monetizing their content and just kind of offered it for free, and also had very few expectations of like. I remember when blogging, you were considered a sellout if you had ads on your website. You were considered a sellout. So if you even tried to make any money off of it, now
you can't find a recipe without looking at like 1,000 ads.
Yes.
Just show me how many spoons of salt, whatever.
Don't need to know
how. That if you ever struggle with a recipe website, that jump to recipe button at the top.
I just learned about that.
To look for.
Yeah.
That's what
I
you
literally
need to
just
look
learned
for.
about this a month
Just
ago.
Look for that link, because they make it easy. People don't understand that it exists there, which is strange, because it's like one of the first things you see at the top of the page. But at the same time, I mean, I have like a handful of recipes from like my family on my website, because I don't consider myself anywhere close to a recipe blogger. I will get the most. It's strange. The recipe world is so different from like every other maker community.
DIY too, but it's I think it's been around longer. That was the original bloggers, and I feel like there's a lot of that. So maybe
it's also one of the few like maker communities where you can eat the offcuts. So I kind of like that. What do I do with this scrap?
I have learned so much from the maker community is great, but also there are so many different cool things you could learn from those different types of communities. Like what's popular in the craft community is not always like culturally what's going on with the woodworking community or whatever, like in terms of creating content and what people monetize and what people don't. I've learned so much from recipe bloggers who, I don't know how often it is nowadays, but back in the day when you got sponsored by like a more generic brand, like a cleaning product or something, you would get flown out to an event, and then you would run into like a recipe blogger and a cleaning expert, and you were a home renovation person or whatever. So you would cross paths with these amazing content creators in a completely different field than you. And it would teach you so much about what it is that they monetize, what they protect in terms of intellectual property, what they hire lawyers for and insure, and all that different kind of stuff. And it was so cool and fascinating to connect with those types of folks. Yeah.
Yes,
people are hiring lawyers.
Yeah, recipe is the recipe gang like is the recipe
I'm doing
street
things
cred
wrong.
Well, because
so
of copyright,
intense?
apparently, like from my understanding, you can't copyright a recipe, but you can copyright, like so that's why the copyright or the photography protections were so much more aggressive with food bloggers, and they protected what they could. So a lot of licensing rules and stuff like that, I actually learned from old school food bloggers, where I was kind of giving some of that content away and didn't realize how valuable it was until I talked to somebody in a different field and going, wow. I shouldn't be including this in my packaging. I should actually be charging separately for it. So some of that was really enlightening. And when the first Haven conference and stuff like that I first started going to, that was like before Workbench Con was even a thing. And Kristen, who created both Haven and Workbench Con, and like there were other content creators who helped create those conferences. But when they first got started with all that, you would cross paths with a couple of people in different fields, and you would cross paths with people who had those kinds of knowledges. And so I just found those first few years of going and collaborating with others and like actually learning from others just to be such a trip. like you get there and it's like your brain just like melts out of your ears from all the information you're suddenly inundated with when you were kind of struggling on your own. But yeah, so those were the before times when I felt like this tiny little fish in this giant pond of super knowledgeable people, and was just trying to figure out how to make anything actually profitable. So
well, let's talk about that. So
I'm trailing off.
you came from you said you had a corporate job, which is
Yes.
the best if you want soul sucking. It's about I highly recommend if you want soul sucking and you don't want to live corporate job. You came from a corporate job, and then you at some point took the leap to go full time doing content. Like, what was the progression like? Because a lot of our listeners, we all daydream of going full time. So, like, how did that look for you? Like, I know you've been doing this full time for a decade, but when did you actually start it, and when did it start turning a profit for you?
Sure. So I had my very first blog post April 1st, 2010. So April Fool's Day, joke's on me. I just started sharing about my house because I followed these amazing DIYers who I was in such awe of, like, what they did. And I just wanted to share my stories because my friend who was doing a wedding blog convinced me that I should start sharing my content, or like sharing pictures of updated house photos. And I kept telling my friends the same stories over and over again, and realizing that, like, oh, you've heard this before. And then one of them said, well, maybe you should write it down and we can just follow along that way. I was like, oh, well, that's a new idea. Why not? So I started doing that. And then Pinterest like became a thing in 2012. And like my account exploded from, I was just randomly, I want to say I was randomly picked by Pinterest to start sharing stuff. And then my account blew up, and I suddenly was getting sponsor offers, and I, had Google AdSense on my blog, and that kind of started generating a tiny profit. But it was really kind of the sponsors that I was running into who were reaching out to me, and we would work out a deal, and that money started coming in. This was way before people were creating video content. So, I mean, like, we're talking about like long form written stuff that's still to this day around on my blog that was making money. And back in the day, you were considered, there was definitely an era of, you were considered a sellout at a certain point where you were putting ads on your blog, and like, who are you to think that you can make money off of this? And everybody was sharing stuff for free and connecting with each other. And it was really just a nice community. And it started making a little bit of money, and I saw that other people were making money. And then a friend at the time reached out to me and insisted I go to this conference where I would hear about other people, and it was kind of like launching for the first time with these other bloggers. And that was the Haven conference. And I was so intimidated because I actually ran into people that I was following online. And I thought that was just, I was so scared because I was like, when somebody was like, yeah, I've heard, I've read your blog. What? You've read stuff I've written? Like, are you kidding me? I was flabbergasted of that.
Such a good feeling.
It was so trippy and humbling, and because I would, of course, do the word vomit of like, I'm Sarah, I'm from uglyducklinghouse.com, and I'm a really big fan, and blah blah blah. And of course, I'm just exploding all over this person, and they're just kind of standing there where they've heard this probably 40 times that day from other people, and they're like, oh no, I've like, I know what you've been doing. And like, and then like shortly thereafter, I'm like collaborating with this person or collaborating with other makers. Back then they didn't call themselves makers, but they, I was collaborating with these other DIYers about some big Pinterest thing, and we were all sharing each other's content, and that started making money. And I was doing that for a couple of years, and I started grad school, and it was awkward for most people in my life because telling somebody that you're a blogger was laughable, and convincing anybody that you could actually do it for any type of living was stupid.
I don't know. I grew up on Sex and the City, and she was a successful blogger, so that's all I'm going to say.
And you just...
Okay, Samantha.
you really struggle. I really struggled with a lot of that identity of kind of going, okay, what do I call myself? Do I call myself a blogger? Because blogging does not sound legit. Do I call myself an online journalist, or do I have a small media company? Like there were a lot of tips like that people got told of what you should tell people that you meet in everyday life of what it is that you do. And I tried some of that and it felt really super inauthentic. So eventually I was like, you know what, I'm just going to give up and I'm just going to tell people I'm a blogger. If they don't like it, they can just deal with it.
Yeah.
I feel that in my bones.
I think even today, that's a feeling you have when you tell people like, "Oh, I'm a content creator."
I'm a content creator, and like I for the longest time was struggled with like I did woodworking, but I wasn't a furniture maker, and I felt like I was just a piece of garbage because I wasn't a furniture maker. That's the goal, professional woodworker. And then it's like, no, I'm a maker. Like I make, like I'm a baby version of Jimmy DiResta. Like I make what I want.
Wow.
And I have all the tools that, or whatever, one of the other guys. Like I'm a even tinier version of Graz. Okay. Just like, it's so hard to label yourself. And we talked, I'm going to jump back a little bit. You talking about like meeting these big brands, or not brands, but these big maker accounts, or blogger accounts. We talked about this in the In Between show, where it's an artificial wall or threshold that we kind of project. Like they're like, oh my God, that's Jason Hibbs, that's Jimmy, that's Sarah, that like, and you like, once you get past the point and start seeing like, oh no, these are just like other people like me. They just figured it out, or they got some help, or they're still figuring it out. But they've been doing it longer, and even they don't feel confident in what they're doing.
Yes.
That
is a very comforting thought.
Yes.
Is reminding yourself that almost everybody in this particular industry, they have no idea what they're doing. They are
wait, can you say that one more time?
We are all flying by the seat of our pants, making it up as we go, bullshitting our way through every single piece of how we grow. I mean, any person who says, "Oh, I've got this great class of how this all is supposed to go," they are lying. I'm sorry, but they are lying. That's how they got
for
successful.
The people in the back.
Yeah,
that's how they got successful. And I don't mean to diminish what they've done. They've worked really hard. They got there. That's awesome. That is not a formula. That is not a formula. Anybody who says that it's a formula is just trying to convince you to give them your money. Like it's, my formula is not going to work for most people, unfortunately, because I started really early and I have the benefit of starting when the pool was smaller and it was easier to be successful with crappy photos, and where I didn't have to step up my game as much. And also I was really good at written form content when it comes to creating very long tutorials that are very detailed about this is what I did. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be a blogger of any kind. It's great. It continues to hang around to this day for a reason, but it's not how everybody's going to be successful. And telling you that this is the way is not the correct thing to do. I mean, everybody has to figure it out for themselves. Unfortunately, there is no roadmap that is going to guarantee results. And you just have to kind of figure that out and go as you go. But the benefit is that you join a community, you collaborate, you guys trade information, and that lack of gatekeeping is super, super, super necessary for most people in this industry to share what they know, to be willing to share all their quote unquote secrets of like, this is what worked for me. Don't tell anybody. But
and that's the greatest thing about this community is the lack of gatekeeping. You nailed it. That's the greatest thing about this community.
As long as you talk to the right people, for the most part, it's that. And you just, you find your core.
In every community, there's going to be some people who are not super great, but you try and figure it out, and you try and always, I mean, there are times where I've kind of questioned my own behavior, where I'm kind of like, was that helpful enough? Did I do the right thing? Did I share enough information, or was I not because sometimes people will will be really, kind of too much for you. And you're just and you need to set your own boundaries of like, this is what I'm willing to share. This is what, like, this is taking way too much of my time. And I need to just be me, and I need to be in this environment where I feel comfortable, and this is making me uncomfortable. But at the same time, I mean, like, I've never really walked away from a situation where I've been like, oh gosh, I really wish I hadn't shared so much information with this other person, because I still just believe that most of the maker community really likes to uplift each other, and we really like to encourage each other. And that has not, and I think that if that ever changed, that would be a really huge turnoff and time to leave that environment. But
I mean, sharing content poorly is still sharing content.
Yes.
Like, I mean, when I looked back at your blog, you were saying like, oh, back then, when I started, I could get away with bad photos or whatever. I looked at your first post, 2010, April of 2010, 14 years ago. And I'll be honest, the photos are awful. But guess what? That's just what the phones, that's just what the phones did. Also, like, let's be real, it's the for when you first move in, house pics.
Flip phone.
Like the house wasn't doing it justice. But it doesn't matter. Like,
and
look at like Marquez on YouTube.
Fuzzy listing photos, actually.
Yeah, it's like, look at all the great content creator, Mr. Beast out there. Like, the first videos they put out were absolute garbage. Like, the first video I put out was trash. It was so bad. I was so awkward.
And the one you put out yesterday.
And the one I put out yesterday.
Yeah.
It does get better with time, because you just kind of figure it out and find your voice. But it's a practice makes perfect.
Well,
There's never perfect. I really think that there's never perfect. There's always a better way you could have filmed it. I've gotten so many comments on things that I've shared where people are just kind of like, well, you could have done this. I'm like, yeah, I could have. That's actually a pretty good point. I should have thought of that maybe, or I should have done it in this way, and that would have made it better. But you weren't around when I was editing, so we're just going to move on.
Well, that's kind of the perk, and that's kind of the thing where it really clicked for me with the whole maker community of like, we're all just making this up and we're all helping each other improve. Is you'll talk, like, I've talked to certain people and they are like my go-to person for this very specific subset of making. Like, these are my epoxy people, and then I've got Pete's my laser guy, and then Dan is my how am I going to get this to actually sell someplace guy. And it always it clicked for me that we are all making it up when I had people start reaching out to me asking questions of like, what the heck do I do? How do I make this tool work? What do I do with this program? I'm like, I don't know anything. Yeah. Why are you asking me? Oh, wait, none of us know anything.
I have that same response to this day. Anytime somebody asks me, how do you do so well here? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't have an answer. I throw things at the wall and I just see what sticks.
Which is why Dan has such just filthy walls.
Yeah. That's why I got the light on green so you can't see anything.
All right. So I want to kind of refocus back to the question, because you gave some really great insight, but I want to know, like, for our listeners.
Oh, sure.
You started the podcast. You started the blog, right? That was the first thing you did.
Yes.
So you started the blog. At what point did something click and you were like, hey, Kyle, like, this might be a thing?
Well, actually, Kyle wasn't in the picture yet.
Ooh.
I was single I was with somebody when I first started my blog, and he thought it was ridiculous. And that was actually...
And that's why you're not together anymore.
And that's it.
None of that here.
It was pretty par for the course about like anybody in my life at the point. It took a while for my family to get on board with the idea of like, this is what she does for a living, I guess. Eventually I was doing the stuff and I was making a little bit of side money, and I never felt ready. And I don't think that there is such a thing. I think it's kind of like having a kid. We're never quite fully ready.
Yeah.
So I actually took a baby leap, like a soft leap into full time, where I was in grad school and I just got out of that, and I got a job offer from a startup company that was close enough to blogging stuff where they wanted me to do their marketing and all that kind of stuff. They're like, lots of things about online marketing because you're so successful with your blogging thing. They hired me initially as a content writer, and I guess I convinced them that I knew what I was doing, and they wanted to hire me full time. And they wanted to hire me full time, and it was not a super awesome salary, but it was like one of those things where like at least I have a salary where I can maybe still do this thing, and convince myself that I can handle both of those things fairly easily. And I was at that job for less than a year, and things were not going great, and I just kind of stopped. I just stopped doing the job. I was not interested in doing the thing. Like they wanted me to move to a different city. I wasn't willing to do it. And they were kind of like, well, this is kind of make or break. You have to move. And I'm like, well, considering you've given me no reason to move, and you've given me, there's no reason I can't do it from where I'm at. And I have a house and I'm working on it, and this is my entire other job. So you guys knew that when I signed up for this position, that I can't just give all that up. And you also have given me no like moving expenses or anything like that. So the answer is no, I'm not going to do any of those kinds of things. And they were kind of like, well, this is what we need from you. And I was like, well,
bye.
Sorry.
Laters.
But I also was not confident that I could like do this other thing, the blog full time. So I just quietly quit my job and didn't tell people on my blog that like I had quit my job. I was no longer employed by anything other than the money I was making from this website. I didn't have a Patreon. Nobody was paying me a subscription fee. It was just like advertising revenue and traffic that I was getting and stuff like that was potentially paying the money. But I was getting enough money from sponsors and stuff that I was like, okay, well, I can still pay my mortgage. Like things are going okay. And it stayed okay for years. Like I was not making stellar money. And to this day, I've never felt like I've made it, like I've never been like, man, I am up there in the upper echelon of like content creators or makers or anything like that. I have longevity, but I'm not a household name or anything like that. Like I am still shocked as hell anytime somebody says that they've seen a piece of my content. I'm surprised that anybody has followed me longer than a day. Like if we've run into each other and they're like, oh, I've heard of you. I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure you're not confusing me with somebody else? I do not have any part of me that thinks that I will bullshit as the day is long to brands that want to potentially pay me that, oh yeah, I'm bigger than life itself. I'm super awesome.
I'll have my people reach out to you and it's just you emailing.
I have an agent and everything. Yes, I did at one point. I don't anymore. But I've waffled in between those two feelings. And I think that that's also super normal, is to waffle between I'm making it, I have to, fake it till you make it kind of, I'm just as good as everybody else here in this room kind of confidence, versus humbling yourself constantly and going, I'm really not that big a deal. I'm really super shocked anytime anybody's ever heard of me. I'm going to introduce myself over and over to the same people, thinking that they've obviously forgotten anything that I've ever done. So I don't think that that's abnormal. I think it's normal to feel like the small fish in the room. I think it's normal to feel like you are just looking at everybody else succeeding and somehow they figured it out and you haven't.
I like that approach of like you're humble to yourself and to others, but it's almost giving me like Lizzie from House of Timber vibes when we had her on. You have the audacity when you talk to brands.
Even she has it figured out better than I do. That's a great way to phrase it.
She said that and we were like, oh yes, that's the one. That's the title. Yes. Like it's the audacity. You got to be a little cocky when you are pitching yourself, but it's okay to also be like humble, like, oh my God, they do follow me. Like, and I think that's a very leveling thing. I think once you make it past this threshold that we talked about, and sometimes you don't even know you made it past it. Like now people are talking, like Braden said, like people started approaching like all of us at some point and asking us questions, and we're like, me? Like, what do you mean? Like,
yeah, other people will tell you that. You will not think that of yourself, or at least most of us don't.
I'm still there. I'm still like, why are you asking me? Ask Dave about 3D printers. Why are you asking me? I don't know anything. Like people ask us because they respect our opinion, and and it sneaks up on you. But it's great to be also humbled by that and be like, okay, like, hey, I don't know much, but here's what I know. And we think of it as almost no info. We're just like giving away just like whatever info to them. They see that as like gold nuggets of information. Like we have to always remember. Yeah, like we have to remember that this
sauce.
They think like a lot of people see that as the magic sauce, as the golden nuggets, as the like, whoa, okay, that's actually really eye-opening. That's great. But like to us, it's not that anymore because we heard that 50 different times from 50 different makers at this point of like how to, do that thing.
Yeah.
So
I also think, to piggyback off of your thing, it's that you will also go through ebbs and flows of that confidence level of where you think, I mean, like somebody comes along and they've recognized you and all that kind of stuff. You start thinking you've made it. Like you're like somebody in the room now. And then somebody doesn't know who the hell you are. And it humbles you back down to zero again, where you're like, well, of course, like you just got a big head about yourself and you should just never be that kind of person ever again. And then you behave as normal. And then somebody, gives you this huge confident boost again, where you're like, okay, I've made it like everybody else. And then no, I haven't. And, you go through those phases too. And I think it's totally normal, but also it's, you can't forget that you're also meeting a lot of people for the first time, and you're going to constantly run into people who will potentially meet that cocky person, and that's their first impression of you versus the humble version that you know of yourself to be. And I've definitely had that over the last 10-ish years of like being the super confident person, like at the booth when I'm talking to a brand or something. And then like, oh gosh, that person standing next to me probably thought I was a total a-hole. And it leaves me with a complex.
I often tell people, like jokingly, I always say, yeah, I'm kind of a big deal. And 95% of people understand that that's a joke, but I think there's a small portion of people who are like, this guy.
Wow.
Who the hell does he think he is?
The A-Rod of the maker community.
Yes,
what
exactly.
an a-hole.
Dan, I remember to this day when we were at Workbench Con, this is 3 years ago, maybe 4? No, 3 years ago. 21. 21. I remember we were at the bar and Moss Epoxy was going to have their little meetup where like it was the first time we all noticed like, look, Moss Epoxy just has like the epoxy girls. And ironically, it was Jeff and Jess from Two Moose too. So like Jeff and then like 10 girls that all do epoxy stuff. And we're like chatting with one of them. She's like, oh, I got to run because I got to do the Moss Epoxy meetup. We've never met her before. We didn't like, and then we like looked her up. She was like 200 something K on Instagram. Like,
oh yeah,
huge.
Jelly Belly.
And it was like,
I can't remember her name, but yeah,
me and Dan got real humbled real fast. Like we're like, whoa, okay. Like, you know what? We're nothing. Like this is crazy. Like and someone that she just grew up in a different, I like to think of it as a bubble.
What is it?
I see it a lot now with like TikTok creators. There's a whole different TikTok creator community, and it's a bubble that none of them know us. We don't know them. And it's kind of crazy.
Like
well, now this is going to bother me. I can't remember her name.
Sharks and
it's not Jelly Belly, FYI.
I experienced that quite a bit of having been through the blog world. Of most of the people that I met, like the first year of Workbench Con, there were only a handful of us. And I mean, and by a handful, I mean like you could actually count on your hands how many of them came from like the Haven DIY blog people who showed up. And most of the people I met were like these huge creators on YouTube, but I met every single one of them like, oh, so what do you do? And like every single one of them, I was just like, and then I finally looked them up and I was like, oh crap, I'm like the tiniest person in the room. I have no numbers to speak of. Nobody should pay me any attention whatsoever.
But that's who you want to be.
Nothing.
It's like you don't want to be the smartest person in the room. You don't want to be the biggest account in the room.
No.
You want to learn from the big fish.
100% agree.
You do, and you also want to have enough confidence when you go into these things of like what you've earned so far. Of like you have a reason to be there. You're not just
you have a place in a room.
Clinging to obscurity kind of thing. That is still super hard, especially when you're like, if you're a big deal on YouTube or something and you meet a bunch of TikTokers, that's going to humble you real fast because nobody's going to treat you like you're anybody. And I'm not big on either thing, but I know what those feelings are like because I've been around long enough that we're like being big in a blog world is nothing to almost everybody. But like there's certain, I mean, but I've also, I've never been big on an account that most people seem to have counted in terms of like impressive metrics. Having a huge following on like Pinterest, for example, is not a thing that like, it takes some convincing for like brands to like think, okay, that has value and things like that. So I definitely think that there's room for everyone. There's room for everyone to grow and to share and to be on board with each other. But I think it's also normal to like constantly remind yourself that you need to humble yourself and like, starting over is not unusual in the social media realm because there's always a new platform that you're not big on, that nobody's going to know who you are, that somebody's going to explode on. And that's going to be a real cool thing. I actually remember meeting to introducing two friends of mine, and I was flabbergasted that the two of them would even be intimidated by each other. Like one of them had exploded on TikTok and one of them had followed the other for years and years and years. But she had like a huge following on Instagram, and she like everybody knew her from like Workbench Con and Haven and all these different realms. The two of them, I introduced them and she was like, "Hey, would you introduce me to?" And I was like, "Are you kidding?" She's like, and she was like, "Yeah, I'm super intimidated to meet her." I'm like, "Oh, okay, sure." Like it was the most bizarre thing because I was like, the two of you are like enormous accounts, and you're afraid to meet each other, and you think I'm the person to connect you. That
big accounts can be fans of each other too. That's what makes them human.
So weird. It was so weird to me because I mean, like the way that they both looked, the way that they looked to me, like I was supposed to be like the common ground that they had. And I was like, no, you guys are both just like enormous accounts. Just like talk.
Just talk to each other. Well, let me, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit. You mentioned a couple of them having big YouTube channels. You are on YouTube now too. You started about what, like 10 years ago on YouTube, if I remember from stalking you earlier. Like, first video, like 12 years ago. Look at you.
The first video was probably like a little bitty house tour of like my puppy.
Yeah, the first like real bloggy stuff appears to be about 6-7 years ago.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of the puppy, just real quick, because you mentioned how surprised you are when anybody says that like they followed you or anything like that. I went through my bookmarks here, and you've been bookmarked in my Google Chrome since Google existed.
Wow.
The post that I found you with is from January 17th, 2011.
Bro, I'm looking at that same page right now where she's using the blue
DIY
Ryobi
dog dish.
I'm looking at that same exact page right now. I was waiting to bring it up.
Guys, this is awkward.
That's the one that I saved. So that's how long I've been. So after Maker Camp, when like you followed me on Instagram, it was for me. It was this was a huge account. This is somebody I'd followed for over a decade.
Wow, that dog dish post. Wow. Okay. Oh. Never been enough.
I was sitting here looking at that page.
By the way,
I wanted to bring up the blue Ryobi. I was like, oh wow.
What's funny is I looked at your oldest posts on your blog, and one of your first posts literally said like caulk skills, like caulking skills, but with a Z, and I'm like, this
yeah,
Z classic. Yeah, this is showing the Z. It's showing its age here.
Oh yeah, no, I had a friend. That was actually an inside joke because I had a friend who would always who would spell a lot of things with Z's just because it was very tongue in cheek for her. But yeah, that was very inside, and I was sharing that online, and that was not a thing I ever thought. I mean, there were actually like, Easter eggs on my blog where like it was only if you knew me, knew anything about who I am, where like you would get the joke. Such as like if you clicked on like cleaning and recipes or cleaning and organization or something like that, it would take you to this dummy page where it was like, jokes on you. I don't clean. That's
actually a great way to troll people.
I I would do things like that on my website because that was who I am, and that was my blog. That was like me getting to know like this tiny corner of the internet that was just mine. And it was only if you deliberately came to me and to my page, and you must know something about me to like get any of this. It was before I was trying to play any kind of Google game or any of that kind of stuff, before algorithms even like entered the chat. So
so how'd you get into YouTube? Like what pushed you over the edge there?
I don't know. I'd shared a couple videos, and I guess I just kind of thought, this next one I want to do all the things for. Like I felt like not only do I want to create the written tutorial, I want to also film this whole thing of how I did it. And it was just a random decision I made where I started trying to share it. And it was also during kind of the time where I decided that I wanted to start kind of branching out to like the different conference. I'd only ever gone to like the Haven conference at that point. And I suddenly started trying to branch out to like Workbench Con, which was in its infancy at the time. I created one of the first booths ever for Workbench Con. I actually created the first Rust-Oleum booth at Workbench Con. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'd never created a booth before, but I said I could. And I was like, yes, let's do this. I'm totally game to showcase your new product and build an entire booth around it. And I was super intimidated because like, by the end of the conference, people had mistakenly thought that they could take stuff from my booth. And so I was actually supposed to ship the remainder of like the whole structure of the booth to a different state by the end of it. And I had to inform the company that like, I guess some wires got crossed, and the communication was like, oh yeah, take what you want. Like, they're packing up, ready to go. And half of my booth was just like gone by the time.
Oh my goodness.
That's very common now at Workbench Con. They'll ship a pallet and then they don't want to bring it back.
Yeah, the vultures of what are you leaving behind?
I was not prepared for that because I was also still attending all the events. So it was not like I was like at the booth being able to tell people, no, don't take stuff.
Yeah.
I was one of the people who like, I didn't have a crew with me. It was just me. It was actually just me and Kyle trying to break stuff down. I had a huge amount of help from some fellow makers, some maker friends, building the booth up, like getting it all ready for the first night. But so, shout out to Charlotte, shout out to Uni, shout out to everyone else who attended that first year. And yeah, by the end, I was super embarrassed because I was like, man, I handled this really unprofessionally where like half the booth is gone. And I have to tell the brand this because they were willing to, they were paying me money to like ship it somewhere else. And I was like, I don't know what else to do. Should I rebuild some of it for you? Do you want me to? They were like, no, it's fine. We don't need it. I'm like, okay, sorry.
Thank goodness.
I felt so unprofessional when all that happened. But I guess
you figure that out. That's the thing. You fake it till you make it again. Like,
yeah,
right?
it was just another lesson of like, you're flying by the seat of your pants for most of this kind of stuff. Anybody who tells you that they have it all figured out is lying and trying to sell you something.
Okay, Sir Fogle's 100% foolproof plan to making money online course removed from cart. Got it.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
There's
never 100%
for free by paying for her top tier on Patreon. It's included free in your fee.
Plus, you can also get it as a bonus feature if you get 3 other subscribers underneath you as the district manager of subscribers.
It's a pyramid scheme.
Ooh, let's create it.
It's an inverted.
Yeah,
it's an inverted.
Let's create an MLM
triangle.
where I just
the Ducklings.
Oh my gosh. Ew. Ew, icky, ew.
Well, all right. So actually, why don't we do this? Why don't we jump into some questions? Because a couple of the questions are questions that I was going to ask you as well, so we can kind of guide the conversation that way. And then if we have some time at the end, we'll just keep grilling you. So first I have to play this audio. I guess that doesn't work now. Cool. That'll just probably play later.
You want me to sing it on the fly?
Can you acapella?
Yeah, can you
Yes.
acapella it, Dan?
It's Black Betty, right?
Oh, Black Betty, yeah.
Whoa, Black Betty, ram lamb.
That's pretty good.
All right,
don't
we
know
can
why-
update the audio now.
Why did that one not work? Just, none of them are
know.
working now.
Just push it like 100 times. I bet it'll work
well,
fine.
that's what I'm afraid of. Now it's gonna stack it, right?
Whoa. Black Betty.
I run the full soundboard, and sometimes we have little technical difficulties, and then we have issues. I don't want it to go off 100 times while she's giving an answer. All right.
That would actually just color the answers even more, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see. Okay.
I
So
had this.
see, they're just all like stacked.
Cool.
All right. Let me play this.
Go, Black Betty. Rambling.
There we go.
There it is.
That works. All right.
That's so much better.
Let's play the first question from Patrick Gensel.
Hey guys, Patrick Gensel here, and my question is specifically for Sarah. I know that you have a pretty impressive blog, and that's been a big part of your origin story. The blog looks great, and my question is, did you design that yourself? Did you design your logo yourself? Or did you hire out to do that? Reason I ask is I do a lot of design work myself, and I always struggle to put stuff together when it's my own thing. So it's always easier for me to have outside perspective. So I'm just curious in regard to your site, if that's something you did yourself or you farmed out. And then beyond that, I know in addition to the blog, you have an Instagram presence. Where would you like to go in the content sphere if you could do anything you want regarding DIY? What would be your focus if you had all the time in the world? All right, that's all I got. You guys have a great Thursday night.
Oh, great question, Patrick. So, okay. So first,
Phenomenal
of all,
question.
Your
That's so good.
Your blog, your baby. Did you design it all, or did you get
Yes.
someone else to do it?
Yes.
So you're behind all of it.
I designed all of it.
Wow.
And I designed like my first logo, and that was mostly just this little tiny duckling that like had like a woodworking kind of inlay kind of thing. And I changed out the logo frequently at a certain point to like have like a Christmas hat on, or like a little Santa hat on, or sunglasses for the summer or whatever. I just had fun with it. It was super pixelated. I designed my website, and I really got into coding and like CSS and HTML and all that kind of stuff back in the day. I designed a lot of blogs for a number of other bloggers at the time too. So I got really into it for a few years. And that was actually part of how I actually even forgot about it until now. That was actually part of how I went full time, is that like that was a supplemental part of my income. That was a side hustle on the side hustle. I was doing that, and I designed lots of other bloggers, and it was all through word of mouth referrals and stuff like that that I was doing that. I continued doing that for myself. I actually tried hiring out a logo designer, and it was a disaster because I thought surely somebody can design something better than me. I don't know. The first thing about logo, like I want it to be really like I would see other people's logos and I'm like, damn, that's cool. And I want something like that for myself. So I hired somebody. I spent way too much money hiring somebody out, and it was super disappointing. So maybe just the lesson there is nobody's ever happy fully with their logo. Like there's always something that they're just kind of like, well, maybe I would want to tweak that, because you stare at it so long and so much that like eventually you just tire of it, right?
You're either
That's how
okay
I
with
feel
it or
about
sick of
looking
it.
in the mirror.
Yeah. Like I think it's normal to be sick of your own brand, right?
Yes.
Right now, because of furniture flipping stuff that Kyle and I are getting into together, because most of everything I've created is just me. Kyle and I have actually been getting into furniture flipping as a way to pay some extra medical bills for our kiddo, our family, and stuff like that. And he's been designing his own logo based on some of the names we've been throwing around, and it is so cool to see somebody else's creative process for that. So I can't wait for that to kind of like, it's actually like he's kind of thinking it in terms of like what would look cool as if it were like a furniture branding and like an actual something that we stamp onto things. And he's thinking of it in many, many different ways than I ever would have thought of.
That's like
when
our buddy Nick.
first designing my own.
Nick's basically his wife's full-time employee now. she restores furniture. She started like a restoration business, and Nick is her full-time slave worker, employee, minimum wage. That's it. Well, that's awesome. I love hearing when like a business becomes a branched out like multiple things. I think that's great. Well, so that brings it to the other question that Patrick had. If money wasn't a problem, like if money wasn't even like a thing you had to worry about, what's the content you would make? Would it be restoring old homes? Would it be restoring furniture? Flips? Would maybe camper vans? Whatever.
It's an excellent question, because I've actually asked myself of that many times over, and I don't think I have a full answer, just because maybe it's just part of like I'm late in life diagnosed ADHD. So I realized that
all of us.
Well, I think it's actually super normal for the creator community. I think that, even if you're not diagnosed, you should maybe suspect it because there's so many of us who just bounce from project to project, never quite finish anything. There's many things that are like considered symptoms that just exist in the creative community that I think that it affects most of us. But I've always said kind of like, if money were no object, I think that I would just be a perpetual student. I love flitting from project to project. It is what makes me happiest and most passionate. And like the only thing that I would probably add on top of that is maybe like traveling to do those things. Like if I could travel from place to place and just do a ton of demo and just learn, I don't know, like a friend of mine who's super into science, she and I were talking at one point about doing an entire show that she does based on demo, like just like the science behind demo, like the actual planning that goes behind demo, like what you need to be careful of and how you do it well. It's not just effing shit up.
You plan demos?
Yes.
Like,
I know, I'm shocked.
Who's doing that? Nerds?
You just don't get in there and start swinging a hammer. You actually have to plan it out.
Not with that attitude.
Yeah, coward.
It's super fun, but at the same time, I mean, like, the science behind all sorts of different things you have to be careful of. And she and I were just kind of spitballing the idea of like, that could be an entire show where you're talking about the science of all those things as a way to make it science friendly, because that was her focus. But I mean, like, it's just, I really enjoy not doing the same thing over and over again. I don't want to be a person who makes the same style of cutting board just because even if I were to find it super popular, like even if I were to find something that like, I don't know, maybe it's just a symptom of how my brain works. But if I found that I made a lot of money off of doing one specific thing over and over again, I don't think that I would find any interest in doing it ever again.
You know what? I'm kind of thinking here, and a channel that fully revolves around, hey, I've never done this. We're going to do it today. And the sheer amount of comments of know-it-alls and smartasses that be like,
you're doing it wrong.
Well, no, you're not. You shouldn't be. Why aren't you? Because you should be. Like, can you imagine? You would kill. You would absolutely kill. That would be the best channel.
I have a fun side story from that. I think of a person who follows me who pointed out to me that I created a video about building my own deck in my backyard. It was actually just a step up platform deck. It was not like, big permitted type of thing. It was just a thing that I needed to do to expand some usefulness in my backyard. Well, I built the whole thing and I used some things that weren't really readily used. Like at the time, like I could not find like that, the joist tape as easily as you can now. And I was trying that out and like going, I've never heard of this. I'm going to try this out. And it seems like it would be good. And so I tried all these things out. One of the comments that I got was like a guy who was like, I've been building decks for 20 years and you actually did a pretty good job considering that you've never done this before. And
that went a left turn.
That meant a lot. But a year later, and I did not notice this because it was somebody else who pointed it out to me. A year later, that same exact account commented on my blog, commented on the same video that I've been building decks for 20 years and you don't know what you're doing.
Wow.
Well, there's no way, because a year later he should be updating it to I've been building decks for 21 years.
21 years.
like that's maybe a little bit of a maker tip. Any person who ever comments on your videos and says that they've been doing something for 20 years, they are lying. They are lying. Every person who has ever commented that they've been doing something
I've been leaving
for
comments
20
for 21 years.
My thing is like, why are you watching this beginner make a deck if you've been doing this for 20 years?
Oh, just so they
How
can say
bored
you're
are
doing
you?
it wrong.
How like you just wasted like 15 minutes of your life watching one person not know what they're doing, stumbling through it.
You forget, not everyone has hobbies. People go to work. Some people just go to work and they come home and they have nothing.
Their hobby is telling people they're doing it wrong on the internet.
Their hobby is telling people they're wrong.
We were just talking about this earlier. I don't watch home improvement shows as like my recretional time.
But we turned our hobby into our life,
show.
and because we're dumb.
But I mean, like, I don't do medical experts watch shows based on medical dramas? Because I've heard that they're not at all accurate. Wouldn't that just endlessly frustrate you? Like,
yeah,
you watch something to turn your brain off, right? Like you would just kind of like disassociate and just kind of like watch Love is Blind or something terrible on TV that has nothing to do with your day job. Just
but
whatever your day job happens to be.
These people don't have to shut off their brain because it's just constantly off. So it's just continuing the same state.
To be fair, people out there that need to turn off their brain, they listen to us.
Also true.
But
we are the mind-numbing content.
We're
the maker version of Grey's Anatomy. Very wrong and very confident and semi-popular.
It's so bad.
But I also just think that I think that 20 is like the golden standard of like I've been doing something for X amount of years just so that they can leave a comment. Like,
I've been doing this for 20 years.
Well, we'll have you back on in 10 years. So you can be like, I've been doing this for 20 years.
This is how you do a podcast. I've been on exactly 3 of them in that entire time.
I'd care if you had 21 years of experience building decks. Like, I would definitely listen to you. What up, noob?
All right, let's jump into the next question then. Let's jump on this one from Sarah because she had a question directly for you.
Hi, Sarah.
Okay, hey girlies, but this question is for Sarah, coming from Sarah from Rosie's Woodshop. I know we talked at Maker Camp about this, but people are asking me to flip furniture, and I just want to know if you're planning to do a YouTube tutorial on flipping furniture anytime soon. Hope to hear from you soon, and hope to see something soon. Bye.
Good question.
It's a great question, and thank you, Sarah. It's weird to say thank you, Sarah, when I'm Sarah. It's strangely enough, I don't run into a ton of Sarahs where that becomes a thing often. But yes, I am planning on creating. I'm planning on creating downloads for some easy PDFs that people can follow. I want to create some templates for how to create feet that are commonly attached to the bottoms of furniture when you're trying to flip them to make them look more modernized. I think that's a really easy thing that I can do for a lot of folks just to kind of simplify and shorten the learning process. There are certain techniques that are kind of universal for how to flip something, how to paint something, or how to refinish. So yes, those tutorials are definitely on the way. And actually, there is, I think in November, there is a maker challenge for flipping furniture this month going on. So we're going to be participating in that and building a piece or working on a piece for that before and after. So
awesome.
Look out for that, because that'll give us an excellent opportunity to also make sure we record every step to provide the instruction for it. So there's going to be lots of little videos with that. I am about to reveal one of the pieces I've been working on. If you've seen anything on my Instagram, there is one piece that I just finished, and I created the part 1, and you're going to see part 2 probably next week.
If you want to see an early sneak peek, go to our Patreon.
Patreon.com/Ugly Duckling House or DIY. We'll see.
Join the now Ducklings. At the end of this call at what, midnight, 12:30,
if you needed a nudge, if you ever needed a nudge, because I bet, here's the thing, if you created one tomorrow, you would be shocked with the level of support you would get.
Shooketh.
Shook it.
I feel like even if I got one person, I'd be super stoked about that, because that would be my mom. Also, shout out to Kathy. I told you guys earlier that she was on the live.
She was in the live, yeah.
So yeah. So she would join, and then I'd be happy with anybody else on top of that, because that would actually
everything
maybe
else
give
is
us money
gravy.
for Ruby stuff.
There you go.
That would be super awesome.
So Dan, Pete, like, we're gonna talk amongst ourselves for like 5 minutes. You just set it up right now live.
We're what you call accountability buddies. We're
Or
just
bad
buddies that keep you
What is
accountable.
that from?
I don't know,
What's
but
accountability buddies?
we just
From?
it's become a maker
trademark
community.
AWP.
Trademark AWP, yeah. It's
Is
thrown
that no?
around
That's a
lot.
South Park reference, isn't it?
Oh, is it? No, AWP. We're claiming it. Yeah, we're claiming it.
South Park AWP.
Oh wait, we got one more question from Sarah here. Let's play it.
Okay, sorry for another question, but custom orders are flooding in right now. How do I time them?
Probably using a clock
Yeah, I don't.
and calendar.
I don't understand that exactly.
Give yourself a buffer. That's all I'm gonna say is like whatever. If you're getting a lot of custom orders, just say like give yourself 3 or 4 days per each one. And if you're ahead of schedule, good, because you're never going to be ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
So give yourself the time.
First come, first serve.
Yeah. And at some point, cut off for the year. Like it could be like beginning of November. Just be like, nope, I'm done January. Yeah.
I don't do custom orders, but I do, of course, create sponsored content from time to time. And I would say do the same thing for that. Tell potential sponsors that you have a calendar. Create an expectation that they can't demand content from you immediately. If they need a 2-week turnaround time, that's a rush order for most things that you would ever do. Keep it in mind that like any other type of thing that you would make for another person, that would be considered rush. And so they would need to have that expectation that like the turnaround time for that is going to be a rush order. So that requires extra charges, because you have to drop everything to do that and shift your time and shift your focus. Even if you don't have another brand or sponsor or whatever, you still probably have stuff you were planning on doing for the next 2 weeks that wasn't that.
Yep.
So if you have to drop what you're doing to shift your focus, still consider that a rush order for brands, sponsors, any other type of content in which you have to stop what you're doing. I've done that before. I've created that expectation with brands before, even if there's nothing else going on. A lot of times there is, but I mean, like, even if there is nothing else, typically my turnaround time is like 4 to 6 weeks or however long. And that should be the standard for anybody who makes something, like, because you're still making content specifically custom to that brand, that person, whatever.
That's funny you say that, like, you, even if you have nothing going on, you still have stuff going on. I recently did a content post for a brand, and I had nothing going on, and they were like, can you get this up in like 2 weeks? And I said, I mean, if you get me the stuff fast enough, sure, go ahead. Got the stuff. 2 days later, I was in a different state for like 4 days, came back 2.5 days later, flew to this joker's house in Jersey, and I was I was in the different time zone for a week for Maker Camp. So, and then after that, it still took me 2 weeks to create the content. So yeah, building that buffer zone. That's smart.
Buffer.
Always have a buffer for yourself. Because also when you're working for yourself, you're the only person in charge to respect your time. You're the only person who's tasked with that particular priority. So if you're taking sleepless nights to get something under a deadline, that should be factored in to how you charge and to how you talk to another brand. Because I mean, you're still trying to run your own micro business in this whole churning aspect of things. And I mean, like, in some ways they could be like, well, you're not doing anything important. Well, according to you, I mean, I got a whole family I have to still support behind the scenes, and I've planned out the next 2 weeks of my life. You're trying to interrupt it, and I'm grateful for that, but at the same time, I have to make time for that, and I can't do that exclusively with just like, I'm willing to drop literally everything else I was doing. I'm going to blow off all my friends. I'm going to blow off the things I was doing, and the holidays are coming up. Like, if you want me to churn this out before all of these things happen, then they're also probably not contacting you first, because they were planning out their content a long time ago. You are who they're hoping can save them. So
Yeah.
at least
Look at-
in terms of like, if somebody needs a 2-week turnaround, it's not because you're their first choice. So
Also, you shouldn't have to explain. You just need to say, this is my turnaround time normally, and if you want rush, it's this. They don't need to know why.
agreed.
They don't need to know that you have a bunch of stuff going on or nothing
Agreed.
going on.
What's
They
the
don't need to know
saying?
that.
Like,
Agreed.
don't be the like whatever for someone else's poor planning. Like, don't be the like the excuse. Like, I forget the whole
your emergency doesn't
Yes.
constitute.
someone else's poor plan. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
or someone
Something like
else's
that.
poor planning is not your emergency. That's what it is.
Oh, yeah.
There it is.
So that's big. Yeah,
We were
and I
gonna
feel
get
that
there
sometimes. Like,
Yes.
well,
You might be
I've gotten stuff from brands, and they were like, "Hey, send us that video proof." Like, I just got it. Give me a week to test it out. I'm not just gonna do a blind review of this thing. Like, give me a moment.
Yeah, that could be a strategy that some not so reputable companies will try and also use so that you don't do your due diligence of the testing period that you have because you have integrity with how you present your brand. They might try and rush you through that process, but that comes down to vetting though.
This product has planned obsolescence at 36 hours. We need your video in 35 hours.
But yes, you're absolutely correct. You do not need to tell them why. You do not need to tell anybody your whys. But at the same time, if somebody ever presses back, you can always say, you can definitely say like, hey, I typically have a turnaround time of XYZ. If you need this before then, it's considered a rush charge of XYZ. It's a really easy way to keep it super professional without actually having to like pretend otherwise.
Customers and brands should expect that. I mean, that's not unnormal.
It's not so unusual that they can't that like they're gonna like scoff at it, and if they do, it's questionable that they did. Like they're now in the position where they have to justify why they think your time is not worth very much, and that's usually not a great negotiating position for them when they're asking you for a huge favor, trying to get them something really quick.
Perfect. There you go. Know your value.
I heard
negotiating is really hard when you first start getting out. I mean, like if you feel like you are just completely in the weeds when it comes to negotiating, everybody is in that position. There are certain tips that you can learn, and the best ways to learn is to actually take like negotiating classes about like how to phrase your words. And I actually took one in business school, and it was super eye-opening. But if you don't have that ability to do that, you can learn tons of like actual negotiating tactics on TikTok, or there are creators who have actually shared their best tips and stuff like that. Absorb that as much as possible when you get into those negotiating positions, or just even have another person send that email for you or whatever. Like have them be the buffer where they're writing it for you or something, because a lot of times they'll rephrase it in a different way that's not representing something so personal to you. Because you feel very attached to stuff.
That's why Emma writes our emails.
Emma GPT.
There's a really good book about negotiating that I read called Never Split the Difference, and it was written by a former FBI hostage negotiator. But it's really good about how to. I mean, not everybody's negotiating for hostages, but it's really good about like your phrasing, your terminology, and like where to be really firm and where to give, like things like that. So I highly recommend.
Look, if you send me this saw, I'll send the helicopters.
I heard that anytime a brand gets after Dan for a quick turnaround, he just sends a screenshot of his Etsy queue and says, "Nah."
Do you know who I am?
Yup.
If you could do yourself a giant favor when it comes to like working for yourself, is to take any type of like, it feels like a gauntlet when you're going through it, but try and do some kind of negotiation exposure to low stakes stuff where you're just practicing over and over and over again, trying to get a better end result. Like if somebody's willing to do that with you, like if there's another maker who's also super intimidated by the whole process, try and negotiate with them. Like you guys just practice endlessly. Just that by itself will make you a much better negotiator because you learn the techniques. There's actual techniques involved of like how you identify your value, how you identify what it is they're after, versus how you can pivot that to like what their hinge point is as to like, oh, this is what they're finding valuable and what we're actually negotiating. It wasn't the thing that I thought they found valuable at all. Like when I first started this discussion. So how did you, asking the right questions, like, how did you find me? That's the content that they want. Like,
I can't wait to learn more about negotiation from your top tier of Patreon, where you're going to have the behind the scenes content.
My exclusive Patreon that has all of the answers to how best negotiate forever and ever.
No. All you have to say is, this is how I negotiate. And then you're golden, because you just, they apply it however they want.
Right. But it's my foolproof method, right?
My foolproof method to me negotiating.
Hostage negotiating with ducklings. Yeah. That's not a knife. This is a knife.
Oh, we got a show title finally. All right.
I love that we just pulled all of that to all the way to how to negotiate with brands out of a question from Sarah that we're not even 100% certain what the question was.
Oh, she asked a question?
I think she was talking about customer orders.
How do I time custom orders?
Yeah. There you go. And it came full circle.
Is it not just, creating the expectation early of like, this is the typical turnaround queue, and then everybody knows that they're waiting in line?
It's the same concept.
How do I time custom orders? Well, you negotiate your ass off. Yeah. That's what you do.
Exactly. See,
that's why I
Sarah
negotiate.
Also has the problem of she says yes to everything, and then she has to schedule it out. So I keep yelling at her say no, don't do that, because then you're gonna be overwhelmed. So, but let's keep going through these questions because we got a bunch in here. Next one's from Jarrod Lapuma, one of our patrons.
Hey guys, from another Woodshop podcast. This is Jarrod from LL Builds. I have a question for you, but first off, thanks for the shout out about the video of my drill press. You make it sound like it's some sort of innovation. Honestly, it was just ineptitude. I don't know how else to communicate. So anyways, the question for today, I'm relatively new to woodworking full time. Just left my career of 18 years, and I'm struggling with content creation. I don't enjoy editing, especially editing the film. I don't necessarily mind recording it. It's a little bit of a pain, but I do it when it's necessary. But I don't like editing it. And I found someone on a third party app that will edit it for me. But by the time they send it back, I'm pretty much tired of it, and it's usually not that great. So I just say, forget it. Anyways, just wondering how you guys deal with content creation, and if you think that's really even important this day and age to make good money on doing woodworking. Thanks. Keep it up.
Dan, I believe you have opinions.
Yeah. I'm awful at content creation, I believe. What is successful and what's not changes within the hour. I mean, nobody knows. It's like what Sarah was saying earlier. If anybody says they have a foolproof plan for how content creation works, they're lying, because nobody knows. I don't really enjoy it, but I understand that it's a necessary evil. Unfortunately, I mean, as a small business owner, I am the marketing team. So I have to do content. I got to create stuff. I got to put it out there. I have to keep my products and what I'm doing in front of people's eyes. Otherwise, they'll just forget about me. Because there's always
nobody can forget about you.
Well, there's always some Joe Schmo from down the street that's gonna, pop up instead. So I bet Sarah has some really good insight on this, though. So I'm interested to hear what she has to say.
I was getting lost into the way you were answering the question. So, what was the question again?
Is it important as a furniture maker or a woodworker, as a sales person where you sell a product, to make content on top of that?
Okay.
And do you enjoy it?
So there's lots of things that I have to do as a content creator that I don't enjoy. There's plenty of it, like sharing on certain types of social media that I don't like actually being that I don't like being mentally present on, but it's still necessary for growth in that regard. And I'm kind of like, well, I could just, when you're trying to maximize the amount of money that you can make off of one piece of content, you have to be in multiple places at once. And so you may not like sharing on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, and being present on Facebook equally. But one of them but one of them may go viral where the other ones didn't. So you play that game, and that's part of your content strategy. The answer is no, you don't have to, but it does potentially leave money on the table. So, you are constantly making that decision of what is worth your time, what's worth your sacrifice. And sometimes, I don't particularly like Facebook as a platform. I don't like being on there. I don't like having the discussions with people on that particular platform. I find people on that platform are like, they tend to be meaner. Like, I find that YouTube comments are not necessarily my favorite, but they're easier to ignore. Facebook, I get pinged the same way that I do with Instagram. So it's a similar feeling, but I feel like Instagram is more comfortable in terms of platforms. TikTok for me mentally is a different platform. I handle it differently. So you may not enjoy each part of content creation. The answer is no, you don't have to do it. It's harder if you don't, but that's a situation where you're picking your battles. So
right.
they're
technically,
yeah.
Sorry, Sarah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, technically, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Nobody's forcing you.
Right.
But it would behoove you to do something rather than nothing.
Right. And you can still make the choice every single time as to which platform you decide to engage in. Because you can decide that I only want to be on Instagram or I only want to be on Facebook, and that's where people can find me. It does limit your pool to people who are on Facebook. There are plenty of people who don't like Facebook who will use Instagram every day. So you may not ever find them. And a very valuable piece of advice I remember getting from Brad from Fix This Build That a long, long time ago was to meet people where they are.
Who's that?
Is he new?
Sorry, it's a joke. I'm sorry. The look of like, what?
He's an old school blogger. Like,
you don't know this
remember
name?
Their names because of all that stuff.
You got another Pete here, name dropping.
Pete's got his phone number.
Meet people where they are is one of his best pieces of advice that he's ever given out. Like, you can't expect that everybody's going to be on every platform. So you go out there and you try and meet people. You try and meet your audience where they already exist. And you can't expect them to jump from Instagram to Facebook just because you're there. If you're on Facebook, it's because you want to meet people on Facebook, and you make that choice all the time with like who and where you share your content. There's definitely huge gaps in where I share stuff. Like, there's huge gaps on my YouTube channel just because I can't get the energy to edit a long form piece of content the way that I want to where I think I can show up the way that I want to on YouTube. I could share all the content that I share on Instagram to YouTube. I don't necessarily want to do that because I want to share a different thing. But you will make that choice all the time of like your small business will benefit potentially from sharing on social media, and you can still make a living without doing that. There's plenty of people who have small businesses and they serve locally and they don't really rely on social media to make that happen.
I'm going to add a little bit to this. You 100% should have all social media. All is a vague thing here. I don't mean you have to have every platform, but lockdown LL Builds, lockdown as many platforms as you can. Because when I search Ugly Duckling House, Sarah is the page, the whole page of Google. She's everywhere. If I search Petrie's Workshop, I am the page. I am the whole page. There's this one and there's this one. Like, you want to dominate the search, and it is free. That's the main thing. And I know content is hard, but like, you don't have to make reels. You don't have to make trendy things. You don't have to dance in your shop. You can just post photos on Instagram, and it's a free portfolio. Like, a lot of younger generations tend to they see more weight behind, they have a social media presence over they have a website. That carries more weight because it almost seems like you're more real. Because anyone can have a website, but like a they have an Instagram following with friends and there's comments, like it seems more real, like they're like a real person. There is a weird sense, and it's something that's just been created because of social media. But I think it is important to, if you're trying to run LL Builds as a business and you're really planning whether it's long term or you're going to give up in a year, doesn't matter. If you're going to do this long term, even better. Lock down everything. Lock down the email. Lock down Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. And if you can have the same handle across all your platforms, even better. And I think it's just free advertising for yourself. It's a lot of work up front, but you also don't have to kill yourself making content. You can put out a piece of content every month or upload a bunch of photos of your finished projects or something, and you're good. Don't kill yourself on the content. Do it when you have it in a moment. Maybe, see if your wife wants to help you out with it or something like that. Don't outsource it to some company. Try to keep it in-house, so to speak. But I think you're sleeping on an opportunity if you are not on as many platforms as possible. That's my 2 cents. Braden, do you have anything else? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think it's fantastic advice in terms of trying to be and trying to put your foothold of like putting your name and your brand in each of those things. In terms of the effort that you actually make on each of those platforms, I do think that when it comes to where you choose to double down, because everybody has a limited amount of time in the day, where you choose to double down, 1 foot in is the same as 1 foot out. And I've constantly tried to tell myself that in terms of like, if I'm putting a whole lot of effort into Instagram, I don't have the time to put a whole lot of effort into Facebook. And so I need to pivot where I think it's most profitable. And a lot of for me, a lot of that pivoting happened after I had a kid, and I had to choose. I couldn't be on every platform. But at the same time, you can create those existing presences of just like physically being there, but parking them is definitely different than like putting your time into them.
And so one thing I forgot to mention
definitely have to juggle what's going to be beneficial. And if you're not looking to make profit from the content itself, it's a whole different animal. You're just looking to like park your name.
And that's what I forgot to mention is like with these sites, you're not actively curating all these. This is, you might have Instagram might be your baby. Everything else is post and ghost. You cross post your whatever and you just walk away. That's my Facebook. I don't think I've ever responded to a comment on there. I post it and I walk away.
I even have with my Facebook DMs, I have a message that automatically appears and says, I don't check Facebook. Reach me on Instagram, and it gets
and I recognize its work, and I know like and Sarah's right. You can't put your energy everywhere, and you can't. There is some services you can pay for where you can post a video and it just puts it everywhere, but then you have to like put the music in if there's any music or whatever. Like you don't have to do that. It's a paid service, it costs you money. But if you're gonna make a video once a month, post it everywhere and ghost it, and then just stay on one platform. Or don't, or post it ghost everywhere, but at least you have a presence. Mm-hmm. You're probably doing more than most like brands on their websites, on their social media networks. Braden, you got anything else?
Yeah, if you feel like spending money on a platform that can like curate and shoot it out to all the platforms, Hootsuite is a really popular one that I have a little bit of experience with. I am probably like the least content creator of every person on the screen right now, just in terms of size and volume. I don't mean that in any bad way. It's just end of the day, I focus on the platforms that I really, really like, which is essentially Instagram. I do it mostly for the community, and just the incredible high when something pops off. Like love it. But I mean, end of the day, I think the real question that you kind of have to ask yourself is after you go and grab all of your handles and everything and park all those, are you looking at content creation from the perspective of being a content creator or creating content to market your products, services, whatever? And there's nothing wrong with not being a content creator. You can just create stuff and, like Pete said, utilize the platforms as marketing for your business. You kind of have to decide that, though, because there is a totally different path that you kind of have to go down with how you're creating content, what you're utilizing. Like you use trending audio instead of stuff that you just actually like, things like that. to work the algorithms, and you've got to do that dance, and it is soul sucking. If you don't actually want to do it, trying to track and like keep up with the algorithms. So if it's not something that you want to do and you don't have some sort of at least like a loose plan of how you're going to monetize that part of your business, is it worth it? Like, I don't think so. I think at that point, use social media the way that social media was meant to be used. Like, just use it for fun and for connecting to people. And there's nothing wrong with that. And just focus on creating physical products. So
yeah,
that's
definitely where you want to shine. Yeah, physical products. Like well, the thing is, if he's making the physical products, he's gonna have content. Even if it's just photos or panning shots of the finished things. It's a beautiful piece. Post it. Easy content.
And like I said, there's a difference between creating content and being a content creator, if that makes any sense at all.
There's also something to be said about figuring out how to have fun with the content that you're creating. For each person, that is a unique choice. Like, maybe, I mean, there's one person I follow, not because like she makes the most amazing projects I've ever seen, but she has the coolest shots of the stuff she's making, like the most intriguing looking like close-ups and far away, and she makes these like super effective like panning moves and stuff like that, stuff that I've never given any attention to. And it's the way that she does it, and you can tell that she's having fun with the making of that, and that's her passion. Her passion is the filmmaking part of it. It's not necessarily in the piece that she made. And I mean, not that she doesn't make great pieces, but just you can tell when somebody's having fun with what they're doing and the kinds of shots they're making, and you can kind of tell that like they really wanted to get this one shot because they're putting it into the content. And I don't necessarily see it adding to the story, but they loved the content they got out of it. And you can usually tell when somebody's really having fun with it. So if you can find a way to make it fun for yourself, then by all means go for it. Like, even if it doesn't actually push the needle in any other way other than just like you happen to find joy in it. I mean, that's content creation kind of where it begins and ends, because when you get really burnt out, that's what you go back to.
Yeah. And it sounds like, Jarrod, you're trying to edit videos, like a build together into a reel. That's a lot of work. Just get some single, like a quick tip or a quick panning shot or something, 5, 12 seconds, whatever, under 15 seconds, just post that. That's it. That's all you need. Just get that
super
started.
Successful content creators will batch their work. They'll create 10 pieces of content out of one thing that they make, and they'll find multiple different ways to spin it. Like the beginning of their thing, like how to strip this piece of furniture, still becomes part of the eventual process of how to do the whole thing. But the actual, like, my best tips for stripping furniture is X. And that's a way to kind of batch your work without having to actually film extra steps.
Great. So we have 3 more questions. We're going to save Gregory and Mitch for next week because they're more woodworking related, and I just want all the Sarah questions taken care of. Malcolm's got one last question. We're going to try to boost this audio a little bit because it's a little quiet. So here's Malcolm.
Hey guys, it's Malcolm from Bossanova Woodworks.
Enhance.
I just want to give a shout out to my fellow Virginia maker who I just met today over DMs on Instagram, despite us both being at Maker Camp this year and not running into each other. Sarah, it was great chatting with you. That conversation got me thinking about community and getting to know other makers in my region, which leads me to my question this week. Do you have any advice, any of you, for organizing a local/regional maker meetup? I've thought about this a lot and have talked with different folks about it in the past, but I still don't have a good plan to pull it off yet. Okay, thanks.
AWP Con. We've been talking about it for a decade. Well, Sarah, you were like, when we pre-played the question in a pre-show, you were like, oh, yeah, I got to think. So you already have a plan, don't you?
So in Atlanta, that was actually something that me and a friend, Aaron, were trying to plan multiple times with other Atlanta makers. And really, it is just a matter of, I mean, there's, for example, there's a Richmond makers group. They're on Facebook, and not everybody's going to see it, but you can at least post about it on there and at least get your ideas about a date, and then start promoting it the same way you would promote any other launch of content that you have. Get a few people to collaborate with you on the concept, and then you guys just kind of go. I mean, breweries are a really popular choice, so you could just kind of go, hey, we're going to meet up at XYZ on Saturday. We're going to meet from 2 to 5. Filter in when you want. We're going to be a big table somewhere outside, and you'll find that people will definitely show. And even if only 5 people do, you're going to have a great conversation. Oh, yeah. So, yep, we planned a number of them, and at one point it got weird where like the guys didn't want to show up because their wives weren't cool with it, and we were just kind of like, well, we're just going to do separate men and women things, I guess. But yeah, there was one meetup that was super weird where I was like, wait a minute, your wives don't want you to show up. Why don't they come? Like, have them come along. But it was it was always super fun when we got a huge group of people together. And it was actually or like if there's going to be a conference such as Workbench Con around Atlanta, do it like just before the conference or just after. You're going to get a ton of people to show up. It would be super fun.
Dan, keep a mental note when we do Midwest Maker Meetup that you and I are not allowed to wear crop tops so that people's wives don't make it super weird for them to come to our Maker Meetup.
You should absolutely wear the crop tops then.
Yeah. Right?
It's just going to say it's just going to say another wood shop on my
and then podcast is tattooed over the stomach like Thug Life.
I don't like that visual.
No regrets.
Podcast.
I mean, I think that the like just reaching out to the community, sometimes it's as easy as doing a story.
Post it on
Like,
Craigslist.
hey, I want to do a meetup on blank.
Don't recommend that.
Is it meetup.com, right? Is the site like that's no, I'm pretty sure that's an actual site. Like, because I used to do meetups. Yeah, like I used to do
that sounded sketchy.
Yeah, no, but it's literally meetup.com. No, it's a group for like you go there, you find a group that's like Omaha-based wood turners, and they'll just like then they put together a meetup.
You aren't lying. This is
meetup.com.
This is a real website.
It is. No, like I've actually used this for like climbing and hiking. It's big into like the outdoor.
Yeah, you guys are making me feel old because I found a great running group through meetup.com.
I've used it too.
Oh my goodness!
One of the closest events is a spinal hygiene event.
Yeah.
What is spinal hygiene? Why are people getting their spines
clean your back so it don't crack? That's a saying that they definitely say. But it's I mean, like, so listen, meetup.com groups via, like, I know it sounds old, but Facebook groups. You can get together through Facebook groups. Anytime there's like Bill Burkle threw together the meetup for his launch of his store, and we all went, and he was sponsoring a podcast. Like, there's all these different ways to do it, but sometimes it's as simple as starting a conversation, getting the ball rolling with stories. Just post a story. Like, hey, I want to do a meetup. I'm in North Jersey. Anyone else interested? And then get some people together and then start a group chat and then get them going.
Also, Malcolm, for Virginia, pay for a sponsored post on Sarah's top tier patron.
Don't forget though that like trying to get a bunch of people to agree on a date is like herding cats though. So just like try and meet up with try and pick the day.
Pick a day
with like 2 other people. Like limit it to just like 2 other people who can collaborate on the date, and then share it out to your social media. Get everybody to mark the date out, a few weeks out. Pick the place ahead of time. Do not poll folks to where you should go. Just give them the answers of when and where to show up. That usually helps.
That's great. I mean, that's what we did with our patrons, scheduling our patron only Zoom call that we're doing next week on the 17th.
Yes,
right?
I definitely remembered that.
Yeah, 17th. We just told
it's
them
on the calendar, Dan.
Okay.
I mean, we did do a poll on our Patreon, Sarah. We did a poll on our Patreon where we asked people, and they said Sunday would be best. And the people on Patreon said Sunday's best. So, yeah, no, definitely. It's difficult. It's herding cats. You're right. I think that's the best metaphor.
Yeah,
it is herding cats, but it's totally doable. If you build it, they will come. I think that's the best way to think about it.
Yep.
Okay. I think we should wrap it because we could talk all night.
Mm-hmm.
We're having a great time. Sarah, cannot thank you enough for joining us today. This was awesome. I love hearing about the blog because we don't actually get a lot of blog makers or DIYers on here. So it's really great to hear like the blog part of it and how that's how what your business is built around. And a lot of our creators are YouTubers and Instagrammers. So it's really nice to hear the other ways to make an income that most of us don't think, just like you learn other ways from other makers in your community. So thank you so much for joining us. This was really eye-opening. Great questions. If you want to find Sarah, where can they find you?
So I'm on most social media channels. I'm on, TikTok, Instagram at Ugly Duckling DIY. I have my blog at uglyducklinghouse.com. And you can find me also on YouTube, on whatever social media channel decides to open up tomorrow. I will probably be on that too.
MySpace top 8, baby.
Yeah.
Oh man. I actually had a MySpace account before all this, but I did.
Didn't
When
we
your
all?
top 8 were the Ducklings.
I don't remember anything
Tom
other
and then
than
a bunch of ducks.
I was a big fan of Zach Braff from Scrubs at the time.
Yeah.
We all
Still
were.
am.
I really
Smash.
really wanted him to notice that I thought that he was cool on my page. That's a really long time ago.
Yeah.
We
all
are
got
all
really
dating
into-
ourselves really bad.
We all got really good at coding HTML to try to put like fake rain on our page.
And somehow
Remember
we
that.
didn't
That, I
crash
barely
all of
knew
our
how to use it.
computers.
I barely knew how to use that thing. I remember signing up for my Facebook account and going, what the heck is this? I don't like it.
I
Where do
remember
I put
signing
the
up and then
profile
they
music?
open it up to everyone because it was only college students at some point.
Mhm.
I had to
That
use
was
my
when it was the
.edu
Facebook.
address.
I had to use my Harvard email.
Okay.
Right. Harvard online school.
You can call me Mike Ross because I faked my entire Harvard experience.
Oh, I get it. That's a Suits joke. Yeah.
Speaking of Harvard, I'd like to thank our patrons. Without you guys, we couldn't go to colleges like Harvard. No. Without you guys, we couldn't keep the lights on. Let's just run with that joke. Thank you so much. If you want to join our patronage, go over to patreon.com/anotherwoodshop podcast. I also want to thank Sarah for being here. Appreciate you.
Thank you guys. You guys are already teaching me so much about like how to have a podcast
Patron.
presence. I don't
if you're
hear
trying to learn things
a
from
lot of
us,
that.
you're gonna have a bad
I'm learning
time.
stuff.
Barking up the wrong tree.
Oh, it's good to stay humble.
Well, thank
We
you
are the
so much
best at staying
for.
humble.
Yeah, we're the best. We keep ourselves humble. We keep ourselves in check. That's why we're on here weekly.
We're the most humble podcast.
The
of all
most humble.
podcasts.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone go check her out. And we love you guys. We'll see you all next week. Bye.
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 Love you long time.
Longer time.